This drawing that you see in front of you isn't really supposed to make sense. I have just a lot of kind of random things going on. Um, it's not supposed to make sense. It doesn't really matter. And that's going to be good for this surrealism project that we end up doing. So who cares if it doesn't make sense? In fact, I'm going to make this make even less sense right now. Definitely doesn't make any sense, does it? Lots of weird, random things going on. It's not finished either, but that's okay. The point of this exercise is not to necessarily make a finished and final artwork. It's to experiment and test out your skills with one-point perspective, and also to kind of show you how you can add some surreal elements to it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I got to this point. The first step is to create a horizon line, and we're going to do that not quite in the middle of the paper, but also not down at the bottom either. So kind of, maybe a quarter or a third of the way up the paper like this, okay? And it should be completely horizontal, which is to say that it should be parallel with the bottom of the paper. It should really run in the same direction as much as you can. And trying to keep your lines nice and straight is really important. Nice and straight and clean. That way things don't get confusing later on, okay? Okay, the next step is to put a vanishing point somewhere. We actually have an option of putting it in different places. We could put it in the middle of the paper. We could put it over to the side a little bit over here. We could put it all the way over to the side. We could put it over here. For this demonstration, I'm going to choose to put it not not in the middle, not all the way to the side, maybe a third or a quarter of the way over to this side, or away from that side. Okay? Now, the next step is to create a big rectangular shape over on this side of the paper. And this big rectangular shape is going to cross over the horizon line. It's going to be nice and big. We're going to do other things to it, but we're going to start with that basic shape. Okay, notice that I'm leaving a little bit of room at the top so that I can add something on there later if I want to. It's also pretty close to the bottom. Nice and big shape, okay? Also, the sides are parallel with the side of the paper, both of them. They're not like tilted that way or that way, but they're very much straight up and down, okay? Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go from this corner to this vanishing point. When you're doing this, you should try to draw lightly. I'm drawing a little bit dark so that you can see it more clearly on the screen. But you should draw lightly because there's going to be lots of lines that you end up erasing. Okay? Next, we have this box, which started out as a rectangle, but now it looks like a box that goes back into the picture as far as the eye can see. Like one long, gigantic wall. Okay? It just goes straight back. And because of how our vision works, when things get further and further and further away, they appear to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And in reality, if we were over looking at this part of this gigantic wall, it would be the same size as this right here. It just happens to look small because we're showing how far away it is. It gets so far away that it appears to disappear at the vanishing point, and that's why it's called the vanishing point, okay? But we're not going to have this be a super, super, super long wall or form. We're going to cut it off and find where we want to put the back edge. And we can choose where we want that to be. It could be closer over here, could be way back over here, That choice is ours. However, for this demonstration, I am going to ask you to kind of follow along with me so that you can kind of add what I'm going to add later on. And so I'm going to put it maybe halfway, in that span and that distance. And I'm going to make a line that is completely straight up and down, not tilted this way, not tilted that way. Okay, now there's some extra lines to erase. Okay, so that looks like a good form. That's what we want it to look like. It's really simple though. We could turn this into lots of different things. A building, a book, a cereal box, a clock, just lots and lots of stuff. We are not going to focus on what the object is so much today. I'm just going to show you ways to make it more complex and add forms and take forms away to make it more complex, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a shape onto this front surface, this front face. It's just going to be another rectangle. I think I'm going to do it up here in the corner. It's not going to take up too much of the space. Okay, that could be a window that's cut out of that surface. Could be different things. We're going to make it a form that sticks off of this surface. Okay, so it's going to be like a smaller version of this, just sticking off the side of it. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to have lines that go from these corners to this vanishing point. Not this corner, because I'm not treating this as a see-through form. If I were to put a line right here, it would be as if I am able to look through something that is solid, which is the case sometimes, but not in this case. Okay, so all three of those lines led directly to this point. I made my ruler line up with that point and each one of these corners to make those lines. That's important. You can't just guess where you think those should go. Not with linear perspective. Not with 1 point perspective. You have to obey the rules of lining up these lines with that point. Okay? That's how it works. Next, just like we did over here where we found the back edge of this box, we're going to find the back edge of this smaller box that's sticking off of the side. Okay? So I'm just going to find where I want that to be. I could make it really skinny. I could make it really stick out. I'm going to make it stick out quite a ways. Okay, those corners should line up with that line right there, right? If you make those lines come straight down and straight across, they should line up with that line right there together. Okay, so that already looks like something is sticking off the side. Now we're going to make this even more complex, and we're going to cut another shape out of this one. Again, I don't even know what I'm making at this point. I'm just making a complex form that obeys the rules of 1 point perspective. So this time I could put a rectangle in the center or something, but this time I'm going to have this rectangle come all the way down to this bottom edge right here. And by the way, what you're seeing is, when this box is intersecting the horizon line like this, or the horizon line is intersecting the box, you're looking at it from your perspective. You're looking at this box from your perspective. So when you look down at the bottom edge of the box, you're looking down at it. When you look at the top edge of the box, you're looking up at it. You're not able to see the top surface or the bottom surface because this section is below the horizon line and this section is above the horizon line. And this line represents our eye line. So our eyes could rest right on this line. Okay? So everything that's below it we're looking down at. Everything that's above it we're looking up at. So what you're seeing with this box right here is the entire box is above the horizon line. So that means that we are able to see the bottom side of it. We can see that bottom shape. It's kind of why I put this one there, so that you would see that. So everything that's above the horizon line, we're looking up at it. So just imagine a box floating above your head. You would be able to see the bottom of it. Okay, back to what I was doing. Okay, like I told you, I made a square rectangle that reached down to the bottom edge of that box. So it's not a rectangle that's just hovering in the middle this time. It's going all the way to the bottom edge, okay? So I'm going to do a cutout form. It's a negative form in this space. And so from this corner, so since this is a negative form, I do it from this corner, and this corner. And you'll see that it shows how important it is to make sure your lines are nice and clear and crisp and straight. Don't have a lot of extra lines fogging up what you're doing, because as you make this drawing more and more complex, it gets more and more confusing what lines belong where, especially if you're a little bit sloppy along the way, okay? Zoom in here to try to show you more clearly what I did. From that corner, you can't see in the screen right now, you can't see where the vanishing point is, but this line from this corner leads directly to the vanishing point. And this line leads directly to the vanishing point, and this line leads directly to the vanishing point. Okay, you can't guess. You have to line it up with the vanishing point, okay? So now what we need to do is we need to determine how deep this cutout form is going to go into the side of this box right here. I'm just going to make it go right here. And for this line, I'm going to freehand it because I'm confident that I can do it pretty well, pretty straight. But if you are not confident, you should use your ruler. Also, before I did that line, I really probably should have erased. It doesn't really matter, just a little bit easier to erase lines before other lines are in the way. So I cut that out, so I don't really need that line that I just erased. So this represents the back edge of the cutout, the negative form. This is basically a hole that I'm cutting out into the side of this small box. When I shade this and add details, it becomes a little bit more clear. But this line needs to be parallel with this line. And then this line is parallel with this line. And it just goes to the side of this right here. And I'll tell you the reason why. So this stops right here because this line is blocking where it would go, where it would lead. Where it would lead would be to wherever this corner went if I were able to see it through here. But this whole side is blocking, so I can't see where that goes, so it just stops. So that corner exists in this picture. It's just we can't see it. And then that line would drop down too and go to down here. But we can't see that. So I'm going to get rid of it. Okay, and now one more thing to make this make sense is a line that goes from here to here. Oh, you know what? I did not make that very straight. So I'm going to try to be a good example to you and redo a couple of those lines. Alright, so I'm back. There might be a little bit of a gap in the recording. I didn't realize that my time had run out while I was recording, and I was drawing for some amount of time without realizing that it wasn't recording. So I'm not sure what we lost there, but what you see right here now is that I've shaded this a little bit just to try to help you see what you're supposed to be seeing with this. This is a positive form. It's a real 3D object within my drawing. This is a real 3D object within my drawing. And then this is a cutout. So it's a negative space. It's not a 3D object, it's a 3D space that's in the shape of like the inside of a box. And I shaded it to try to show that a little bit more clearly. You know, we're learning about linear perspective and more specifically about one-point perspective. But artists often, most often, don't use just one technique or method to create the illusions that they're trying to create. So using one-point perspective, yes, and it is effective, but what makes it even more effective is value and shading to show how some things are getting more light and some things are getting less light. And we perceive that and notice that it's a three-dimensional form when we see that with that value and that shading, because that's how we see the real world too. Okay, now we're going to move over to another part of the drawing and create a different form that comes off of this main form to make things more complex. And this time it's going to come off of the side over here and it's going to be below the horizon line. So that means that we are looking down at it. So everything that's below the horizon line, once again, we're looking down at it. Everything that's above the horizon line, we're looking up at it. Okay, this time though, we're going to make a form that's not quite a box type form. We're going to use a box to kind of get started, but then we're going to change things up a little bit. So, because it's on the side, got to think about things just slightly differently. I'm going to make, it's going to be basically a new shape like this one that's coming off of the side like that. So, I'll show you what I mean. It's going to be attached to the side of this one. So I'm going to have a line that shows that it's a corner with that wall. So there's this wall and then there's a corner right there. And then where that intersects right there at the bottom, I'm going to have a line come out and going to work really hard at making these lines parallel. Okay. Now, instead of finishing a box like I would normally do, and I'll just do it, but instead of finishing the box like this, which is what we could do, okay, and we could do this, line going to the vanishing point, line going to the vanishing point, line going to the vanishing point, and I kind of guessed about all of that because I'm planning on erasing a lot of this. Instead of creating that box, we're going to make it a more rounded shape. Okay, I'm going to erase that. Hopefully you didn't draw that. And I'm going to make sure, actually I do need this line, so I'm going to make sure that it actually goes to the vanishing point. And that was pretty close. As well as that one, okay? So they both lead to the vanishing point. I'm not going to do this corner, and that already is represented by the bottom of the box right here, but I'm not going to need it. That's going to end up getting erased. So I'm just going to erase that right now. Okay, so what am I doing? I'm going to go from this corner, and I'm just going to make a curve kind of like a quarter circle almost. And I don't know what this is. Again, don't know. Doesn't matter. And now, just like I made this, I'm going to make one on the back side of wherever it is I want to put that. And it doesn't have to be lined up with this corner. Some of you might think, well, I'm probably supposed to go from here and then curve it around. You don't actually have to. You could. That's fine. But it doesn't have to go there. It could go right here. It could go right here. You could make it extend out longer than the building. It's a little bit up to you, because this is like a separate form. It's a separate thing than this. It just happens to be that they look like they're touching and they're connected, like they're attached. But technically this is just a separate form. I could move that around and put it somewhere else. Okay? So I'm going to put the back edge right here, I think. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to try to copy this curve. It's just going to be a bit smaller. And why is it going to be a bit smaller? The reason is because it's a little bit further away. Okay. Now there's a little bit of a problem that I've got here. I'm going to erase this. It's not really a problem, I just haven't finished. Erase that, those are extra lines. And then I need to redraw this until it comes down and touches right there. And now it looks like this is a form that's just kind of sticking off the side of that one. Okay, we're going to go to a different part of the drawing now. Go over here in the top right hand corner of the paper, and I'm going to put a box in this area above the horizon line. Got my box. Now I need to have lines that go from these corners to the vanishing point. Okay, I got all three of those corners having lines going to that vanishing point. Now I need to cut off and decide where the back edge of my box is. Just need to make sure that these lines are parallel with these lines. The back edge is parallel with the front edge. Okay, one thing I want to make sure that you notice about this is that this box is hovering above the horizon line. Right now it looks like it's floating in the air. That's perfectly okay, especially for a surrealistic artwork that we're going to be creating. It also looks like, from our perspective, since this line represents our eye line, our eye level, we're looking up at it and we can see the bottom of it. And we can see this side of the box as opposed to that side. And it's because this box is on this side of the vanishing point. So it's almost like there's an invisible line here too. And everything on this side we're looking at that side of it, and everything on this side we're looking at this side of it. Okay? Okay, this drawing that we're doing does not have to make sense. It is perfectly fine that it doesn't make sense. We're going to complicate it further and make it make even less sense. So I'm going to put an object that is kind of like a bridge between these two objects, okay? So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to be doing a long skinny rectangle from here that overlaps onto this side and then goes and overlaps onto that side. So I'm going to repeat myself again and just say that this end of this long skinny rectangle goes onto this side of this larger box, and it makes it look like it's attached. Same thing over here. Now we're going to make that skinny rectangle look three-dimensional. And the way that we're going to do that is by having very small short lines that lead directly to this vanishing point coming from this corner and this corner. I'm going to use my ruler on this side. Okay, now we're going to draw a line. Goes over, and before I do that, I'm going to erase a little bit of this, a little bit of this, just because I know that that's coming. Next, I'm going to put a window in the side of this. Again, this is not supposed to be making sense. It's kind of a weird drawing. What we're mainly concerned about is obeying the rules of one-point perspective, okay? Okay, I've put a rectangle into the front face of this box, and now I'm going to make it look like a cutout, similar to this. That happens to be the only corner that I need to do a line to, because if I were to do it over here, it would end up being right there, which this side of the box blocks that from our view, so I don't do that, and I don't do it here either for the same reason. We decide how deep and far back this window goes, the thickness of the window, and then we make the back edge of it, or the inner edge of this box. I made those lines. They're parallel with these lines. And they just go down until they hit that edge. They go down further, but we can't see them because they're inside. They're behind this part. And they're behind this part that goes over further. You might be wondering why I flip my paper around all the time. It's because I'm trying to, when I'm making straight lines especially, I'm trying to compare it with other lines that I've already drawn or the edge of the paper. And certain times it's difficult to do that without blocking other lines I've drawn. So I flip the paper around so that I can see and I can compare. Okay, we're going to go to another part of this object now. I'm going to go to this corner right here. And I'm going to cut a chunk out of the corner, a box-like chunk. The first step of that is to create a shape on this front side. Okay, so I just did that. I am making sure that lines are parallel with other lines. This side is parallel with this side. I'm just comparing as I go. And if something is really off, then I need to figure out where the problem is, okay? Now I'm going to go, because this is going to be a chunk cut out of the corner, I'm going to go from here to the vanishing point and here to the vanishing point. And then I'm going to decide where the end of my hole is, and I'm going to make a line that goes straight up and down. Okay, so that's going to look like it's a chunk cut out of it. So from this corner, actually, I'll do this first. This is basically like I'm slicing a skinny rectangular object, 3D rectangular object, out of this corner. And so there's going to be a new front piece right here. So I'm going to show that by showing this back corner and this top back corner, the bottom and the top. And then from these corners I'm going to have lines that go to the vanishing point until it hits that line. So you see what I just did there? This line goes straight across, just like this one. Do need to make sure that I'm being parallel, and I don't know if I did a perfect job with that. And then this one is parallel with this one. And now I'm going to have a line from this corner going to the vanishing point until it hits right there. And now, where those two lines met, I should be able to draw a line straight down so that it meets both corners. Okay, going to move on to another part of the drawing now. I'm going to go to the top of this box, add another box on top of it. The way I'm going to do that is just how I've done everything else so far, pretty much. I'm going to do my front facing shape and then go from there. Next, one corner I have to deal with, a line that goes from here to the vanishing point. Let's see what happens with it. I only went back that far. Then I'm just going to drop a little line straight down to be the back edge of that box. We only see a little bit of this because that box that I put on there is pretty short, and part of it is covered up by this part of the building and this part of the building, because we can't see over the top of it. We can't like curl our vision over the top of it to see this. We're looking up at this, and this blocks our view of some of the stuff that's on top, just from our perspective, because again, this is our eye level and we're looking up at this stuff. Now I'm going to put another layer on top of that one, and it's going to be wider than this. Okay, so it's going to be wider all the way around. So I'm going to put a skinny rectangle that's hovering above this one. It might seem weird why it's hovering, but hopefully it'll make sense in a minute. So like I said, right now it looks like it's hovering, but hopefully in a minute it will look like it's attached to this. So from this corner, and this corner, I need lines that go to the vanishing point. The back edge of this slab that's on top of all of this is going to go, I'm going to make it look like it's going past this level. So I'm going to put it right there. That way it looks like it's going past. There's a section of it that's going further back. And it's going to go straight across until it hits that line. And then I'm going to have a line that comes straight up, just like that. And hey, that looks like that is, that's attached right there. So it's like this is one big piece of whatever this thing is. This is another level of it that's a little bit smaller, but it's right on top. And this is another level that's a bit bigger and wider, but it's on top of this one. Okay, I'm moving on to a different spot. You're probably wondering when I'm going to be done with this thing. But I just want to show you that there's lots of different options. We're only doing a couple of basic rules, but there's lots of options that you can do with it. So, let's realize this. I have lines that are either going straight up and down. Just look around. Look at all the lines that are going absolutely straight up and down. Okay? Or I have lines that are going straight across, so horizontal. So completely vertical ones, completely horizontal ones. Look at all the different ones. And I have lines that are going to the vanishing point. That's it. There aren't any lines that are going in, well, that's not true. I do have this curved line. But that kind of represents sort of a straight up and down line and a straight across line. That's an exception, it's true. But by and large, lines are either going vertical, horizontal, or to the vanishing point. Okay? So if you could try to learn and try to figure out the pattern here, the rules of which lines go straight up and down, which lines go straight across, and which lines go to the vanishing point, you can do a ton of different stuff. A great rule of thumb is that the front edge, the front side of something, is going to have lines that go straight up and down and straight across, so vertical and horizontal. And then the side of something is going to have lines that go to the vanishing point and straight up and down. So the side, vanishing point, and straight up and down. The front, horizontal and vertical. Okay? Okay, so here's this new thing I said I was going to do. I'm going to do a window right here. Two lines that represent the two sides of the window. Then, because this window is existing on the side of this major box, the top and bottom are going to go to the vanishing point. Okay, let's say that this window doesn't have much in the way of thickness that goes into the box, into this major box, and it's just kind of thin. Maybe it has a pane of glass on it. I can just represent a little bit of thickness by thickening up this line and this line and this line. Okay, but not this line, because our view of the thickness of the window is hidden from our view from this one, because we're looking at it and we're just catching that edge. But we're looking into the window on this side and the bottom and the top based on the position of where this window is, because part of the window is above the horizon line, part of the window is below the horizon line. On your example that you're doing along with me, it might look slightly different, like maybe this window found its way all the way above the horizon line, or maybe this window found its way all the way below the horizon line. Little things like that can happen and are not wrong, but it does just change your perspective of that thing a little bit. So if it's below it, then you're not going to see this thickened line up here. But you will see this one and this one. If it's above it, you'll see this thickened line and this thickened line, but not this one. Okay, so it's just a matter of perspective. I'm going to put a crossbar here just to show that it's a window. Okay, this is kind of important to note. The crossbar happens to be right on top of where the horizon line is. That means that that is going to be completely horizontal, just like that. But if that crossbar were a little bit lower, then it would be tilted that way. If it was even more lower, it would be tilted that way. As you go up, if that crossbar were up, then it would be tilted down like that. Okay? It just happens to be that it was right there for me. Okay, now you might be wondering, how do you do a window on the front side? It's actually much simpler than that one, unless there's thickness that we have to show, like this. I'm just going to create a window shape. Okay, all I did was a rectangle, and then on these three sides, I thickened them up. The three sides that are basically opposite the vanishing point, because it's on this side of the box. So I guess maybe I should say the three sides that are opposite this line, because then on this window it's these three sides opposite this line. So this kind of this corner edge, this kind of between the front side of the big box and the side of the big box. That's this line right here. Shows you kind of which lines you're able to see. They're the ones that are opposite this line. I stopped the one-point perspective part of the drawing and launched into adding surreal elements to it. I wanted you to see that there can be a connection between one-point perspective and surrealism, which are the two main concepts we've been dealing with lately. Remember, surrealism deals with the subconscious mind, like dreams. Just like things in dreams don't make sense, the things that you put in this drawing don't need to make sense. Most of this drawing has been about you honing your skills of one-point perspective. Now I want you to treat this drawing as an additional brainstorming opportunity to find different ways that you can add surreal elements to your one-point perspective drawing. Try to have fun with it, feel free to go a little crazy, and good luck!